We continue our story with Maylene talking to Dawn. Keep in mind, Ash and Brock, or pretty much the group in general, would have met Reggie at this point. And Dawn's trying to wonder what's got Maylene so bugged out. But as we all know, just like in the original, she explains what Paul said. That she was one of the easiest gym leaders he ever had, and that this lightweight badge was just as much as her. Easy. And so Maylene details it, and obviously we would get the full flashback before this incident. Maylene, obviously, as the gym leader, does challenge Paul, or Paul challenges her to a battle for the fighting badge. And this is where Maylene asks him if he's ready. He's like, yeah, I'm ready to get this over with. This is going to be a cakewalk. And so Maylene throws out her first Pokemon, that being Medichan, just like in the original. Now, this would actually be a different change, of course, here, as since Paul has a lot more Pokemon still, he throws out his Nidoking. Yeah, I know, obviously, a poison and ground type against a fighting type gym, certainly nothing can go wrong, right? And this is where Medichan starts off with a Drain Punch, hoping to get some free damage and some easy energy. However, this is where Paul shows Nidoking is surprisingly fast when he actually asks him for a poison jab. And not only does Nidoking have the power advantage, but this poisons Medichan as well, and this actually causes her to use Meditate to try and alleviate some of the poison, but it hurts. Even though he is able to recover some, it still hurts. And using this opportunity, when Medichan flinches, Paul unleashes a Thunderbolt, or has Nidoking unleash a Thunderbolt, which strikes Medichan for a massive amount of damage, causing it to actually envelop in paralysis as well. The reason why I'm having it like this is because, again, Paul is known as a perfectionist, even if he's aggressive with his methods. He tries to perfect everything about his Pokemon, including the after effects of his attacks. So Medichan tries to go for a confusion, but Paul utilizes a Fire Blast, ending the battle right then and there. This is where Maylene has to call out her second Pokemon, that being Machoke. And so Machoke actually takes an early lead, actually landing things like dual chops, dynamic punches, and stuff like that, and somewhat tries to overwhelm Nidoking. However, Nidoking pushes it back with a Thunderbolt, which he's able to actually... This is where Maylene actually shows her intelligence, right? Actually utilizing Thunder Punch to actually not only block the attack, but to charge it up and land it on Nidoking. While he does have the ground typing, it's the force behind the punch that actually causes this to work. And Paul, seeing this, does get a little angry and decides that, alright, since we want to play it like that, he's going to switch out. And switches out Nidoking for Murkrow. Now, obviously, just like in the original, this does not go well for Machoke here. Now, Machoke does put up a good fight, actually landing a dual chop when, it goes right through a Shadow Ball and stuff like that, and then landing a super strong Thunder Punch. However, this does not stop what happens. Honchkrow still evolves, or sorry, Murkrow still evolves into Honchkrow, right? And actually learns the move Haze. This not only obscures the vision of the Pokemon, but allows him to basically pull the same thing he did with Torterra, but instead keeping it in the haze, landing multiple Night Slashes before coming in with a super strong Sky Attack, just straight up annihilating Machoke right then and there, earning Paul his second victory. But now, the last one, Lucario, Maylene's ace. And, well, yeah, Paul gets a very sinister grin on his face and thinks that this is a perfect test. And then returns Honchkrow and throws out Monferno. Monferno's demeanor is actually a cocky and aggressive mixture, meaning that, well, he's not your traditional Monferno, as again, he was trained and raised by Paul at this point, as he was never let go. Then this is where the match begins. Lucario starts off with a Bone Rush, actually running down Monferno, and, well, Paul immediately responds with Monferno utilizing Power Up Punch. And, well, the back and forth between these two is absolutely a spectacle. However, Monferno not only breaks the Bone Rush because the attack seems to get stronger, he then utilizes the opportunity to land a devastating flamethrower, pushing Lucario back. However, Mei Lin tells Lucario to use an Aura Sphere to alleviate the damage, and this actually works to a degree, and well, it begins to push back Monferno's flamethrower and actually lands the attack, to which Lucario utilizes that moment to actually get in a devastating close combat, bringing Monferno down to its knees. And so this is where Paul simply states, you really gonna lose to that steel type? There's no way you should be losing here. Get back up now and win this. You understand? And this is where Monferno's Blaze activates out of sheer rage and determination. And then with a simple Flame Wheel, he overwhelms Lucario, kind of like how, Infernape overwhelmed Luxray. But instead, when it hits the wall, it causes a massive explosion, which knocks Lucario out cold. And, well, obviously give him some burns and stuff like that. And so Monferno jumps back right to Paul's side and is actually grinning from it. And this is where Paul states, good work, I expected nothing less, and returns Monferno to his Pokeball. And well, that goes into the scene where Paul not only receives the badge, but simply calls Mei Lin an absolute lightweight of a gym leader. And so this is where we would go to Paul's brother Reggie, I should say. And he's pretty much talking with Ash and conversating with about him. And well, he does get a good look at Ash's Pokemon and actually wants to test Ash to see his resolve. So keep in mind, Ash's Pokemon team is much more different than in the original. And this is where he actually does have a full team of 6. And this is where we actually get into the first battle, sorry. And we see Reggie utilizing Nidoking because he does seem like he was a normal type specialist, so I think a Nidoking he would have. Plus, it kind of shows how he and Paul are opposites, while Ash uses Gible. So, the battle begins with Brock as the referee. Gible starts off with a Rock Smash, while Nidoqueen goes for a Mega Punch. They both clash, but Nidoqueen, actually comes out the better because, again, she's much more experienced and much better trained. So, Gible actually tries to go for a dig and manages to move around the ground for a little while, but this is where Reggie decides to deploy a Earth Power. And so, Nidoqueen smacks her hand on the ground and, yeah, I think we all understand what happens next. Gible comes right out the ground, and obviously with all that damage, another Mega Punch comes in, and it's about to hit Gible. Like, it's coming in hot. But Ash actually has Gible use Dragon Rage at close range, and this not only explodes on the Mega Punch, but causes some damage to Nidoqueen's arm. However, this is where Ash tries to capitalize by utilizing another Rock Smash, hoping to get in that damage and actually add on to it. However, Reggie then has Nidoqueen deploy a Hyper Beam, and this manages to, knock Gible out cold. However, Ash picks him up and tells him that he did his best. There's just a lot of room for him to grow, and he hopes that he can train him to reach his full potential very soon. And so, Ash returns to the Pokeball, and this is where we get the next battle, that being Aron versus Staraptor. Now, understanding that he is at a type disadvantage, this is where Reggie tries to play it smart. And keep in mind, Ash's Staravia is out watching this alongside his other Pokemon. And this is where we actually see Staraptor start off with an agility. And this is actually a pretty good move because it just narrowly avoids an Iron Head from Ash's Aron. Keep in mind, he caught Aron before Gible and actually trained him pretty well. So Aron not only overcame its fearfulness, or at least its scared nature, but it's able to, move astonishing fast. And so this is where Reggie capitalizes with a close combat. And, while you might say, oh, this ain't a good move, it's hitting steel. Yeah, Staraptor actually has, stronger wings than the average flying type. So, Yeah, this is pretty effective. And so this is where Ash tells Aaron to power through it and utilize a metal sound, dropping Staraptor's defense even further. Because again, apparently close combat also drops your defense. And this is where, after the close combat is finished, Reggie calls for a steel wing, which actually knocks Aaron onto its side and actually leaves it down for the count for a minute. And Ash looks at Aaron and actually asks it if it's okay, with Pikachu and the rest of his Pokemon, like Buizel and Grotto, showing various amounts of concern. However, this is where it gets back up, and Ash calls for a double edge to counter the second wave of stealing. However, as Aaron does it, it clashes with Staraptor and begins to glow bright. And then Staraptor gets pushed back by the much greater weight of a Lairon. And this is where Ash is absolutely excited that his little Aaron finally evolved and got its debut as one of its stronger Pokemon. And so Lairon decides to showcase one of its newer moves to Ash, which I think would definitely replace likely Dig, and this would actually be Rock Slide. So yeah, going in for a rock slide. This not only buries Staraptor, but leaves it unable to battle, with Lairon running to Ash and nuzzling his leg. And this is where Grotto walks over and actually praises its friend for actually being able to, well, utilize its new form properly. And this is kind of understandable because Grotto is kind of, well, not only, is better with its new form, but is much more faster. And this is where Reggie kind of eyes Grotto with interest, wondering how different it is from Paul's. And so he decides to send out his last Pokemon, his strongest, his Drapion. And so this is where he states to Ash this is his strongest Pokemon that actually landed him a large majority of the wins in the Battle Frontier. Grotto, seeing this, is more determined than ever. And while Ash was thinking about using Buizel, seeing Grotto's determination, little dehydrated. Seeing Grotto's determination, Ash sends Grotto in, and the two of them face off, with Grotto more, and I mean more than ready to get this done and down. And so the match begins. Drapion goes for a pin missile right off the bat, no hesitation. Sniper ability fully locked in, and he's about to, yeah, it could end Grotto if it does hit. However, this is where Ash tells Grotto to utilize a Razor Leaf, and this is where it actually counters it pretty well. And this shocks Reggie, as he never seen even Paul's Grotto as strong as that. So he decides to get in close, go for an Ice Fang. However, Ash is not having that and tells Grotto to use Rock Climb, and this pretty much just elevates or pretty much smacks Drapion right in the face and causes it to elevate. So Grotto runs at it and is getting ready to use, its claws to end this battle. However, Drapion prepares a Brick Break at his trainer's command. However, Ash doesn't care and tells Grotto to go for it, land the attack. Even if they lose, who cares? This is about training and it's about progress. Show them your resolve, Grotto. Show them that you can win this battle regardless of the type disadvantage. And so, Grotto's determination causes the shrubs on its back to grow. And well, his determination actually increases his speed as well. So this is where we actually see green tendrils shoot out and grab Drapion's Brick Break. But it also causes pain, as Grotto is utilizing Giga Drain. And this is where Reggie's absolutely stunned. He's like, this kid's resolve is something else. And this is where Grotto rams right into Drapion with everything he has, still holding the Giga Drain and slashing out of his claws. But Drapion still goes down with its second arm for the Brick Break. And this causes everyone to tumble. And well, the dust eventually settles, and it's revealed that Drapion won. However, it collapses right after, and Grotto gets up, kind of disappointed he didn't win. But Ash tells him he did wonderful, and he hopes that he can improve him even further so that they can beat Paul far better than what he did before. And Reggie is pleased with this. And that would end that episode, right? But this is where we get a different version of Mutiny in the Bounty. Now, everything kind of happens the same, where Ash and this time Reggie also hear girls screaming as they were pretty much helping Star Raptor, Master Bravebird, and Buizel learn Water Pulse. So, with that being said, Hunter J still catches the girl's Gardevoir just like in the original. Obviously utilizing her arm cannon, one of the dirtiest tricks in the book, but one of the most overpowered things in the book. That thing could freeze legendaries. Nah, we need Pokemon posters to use this on the regular. But that's besides the point. And so, Ash seeing this, obviously doesn't like it and tries to confront Jay with his Pikachu. However, Jay sends out her Ariados, webs him up, and takes Pikachu. So this does mean that Pikachu does get kidnapped, and obviously with Team Rocket as well, Meowth also gets kidnapped. So Jay's Salamence also just, kind of manhandles a large majority of the Pokemon there. And this actually gets a burning passion with Gible especially, who hopes that one day it could achieve enough power to beat that Salamence. So Gible has a bit more determination to overcome its little weakness, if you will, or overcome its lack of power. And so both sides basically invade Jay's ship. And well, we gotta get some similarities to this timeline, except it's kind of with Ash, Gible, and Pikachu rather than Grottle, because again, Turtwig was here in the original, and I think it's safe to say that Grottle's not fitting in them vents, like at all. Like I'm just saying, and I mean, James, you got a lucky view right there, my boy. It is what it is. But this is when they find the collection, and Ash recognizes one of the Pokemon. He's like, oh my gosh, she got you too? And this is where he pretty much just deactivates the containment cell. And this is where he sees Houndour. And Houndour rushes up to him, licking him and stuff. And he tries to escape with the rest of the Pokemon, but gets caught by Jay's Drapion, with Pikachu looking in fear at it, or kind of stunned, just like he was in the original, as he doesn't know how to get Ash out without hurting him. And so Houndour, seeing this, seeing the same person that saved him again in peril, leaps into action. And so this is where Ash looks to the side and sees Houndour pretty much just leaping onto his shoulder or onto the claw of Drapion, and then without any hesitation utilizes a flamethrower to scorch Drapion's face. He uses it at a low level so it doesn't consume him in flame, but once he lets go, this is where he and Pikachu, who unleashes a Thunderbolt, just straight up cook Drapion at this point. And well, yeah, Jay actually tries to utilize this opportunity not only to return her Drapion, but tries to freeze, Pikachu and Houndour again. However, Houndour lets out a Dark Pulse, which actually destroys Jay's glove, and unfortunately, she has no choice but to retreat, actually summoning her Salamence and her Ariados and utilizing the web bindings to kind of create a barrier for her so that her and Salamence can pretty much just escape. She still has her Ariados, by the way. Now, returning the girl's Gardevoir, this is where she thanks Ash greatly for his help and actually awards him with a Pokemon egg. Ash is actually excited about this because he starts thinking about some of his past egg Pokemon, that being Phanpy, who he raised all the way up into a healthy Donphan, and Larvitar. And he actually does think of Larvitar in hopes that he's okay, and maybe hopes he'll see him again. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. And this is where Gardevoir pretty much pats Ash on the back, telling him in a psychic way to take care of, her egg. However, before Ash goes, this is where he sees Houndour standing in front of him. And well, it's kind of obvious what Houndour wants. Ash saved him twice, and he could never repay this debt. So Houndour does go with Ash, and well, Ash winds up catching Houndour, but he understands that he has way too many Pokemon on his team. Pikachu, Buizel, Staravia, Grottle, Lairon, and now Houndour and this egg. So he decides to send Gible back, but before he does, he tells Gible, that he wants him to train with his older Pokemon, as he saw the determination in his eyes. And he wants him, for the next time he does use him, because he is going to call him back very soon, to train with his Pokemon and become stronger. And so when Gible goes to Professor Oak's lab, he actually looks around and starts greeting Ash's Pokemon, but he wonders if any of them want to train. So this is where he meets Bulbasaur. And when Gible expresses that he wants to train, this is where we actually see Bulbasaur bring him over to a group of Pokemon that are training, that being Totodile, and he is training alongside the likes of Cyndaquil and Bayleaf. And that's where we're going to leave it off here, you guys. What's going to happen with Gible and these three Pokemon? Are they going to train together? Are they going to get stronger? Are they all going to evolve? Who knows? But I'll see you guys later for the next part.